Welcome to episode 2 of creating an interactive design portfolio. Again, let's reiterate what we are building. In the last episode, episode 1, we created this. This is what we have so far. We have our vertical navigation. In this episode, episode 2, we are creating this hamburger menu. So the side panel comes out to the left, and then it returns to the right. Additionally, the hamburger menu turns from a hamburger to an X. And we are going to create this using HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript. Additionally, I want to point out that in the description below, in my pinned comment, I will have a link to the GitHub repository where you can find all of the code we are creating. Let's jump into the code. Okay, so let's start in our index.html. Right where I put this comment, hamburger menu code. So we're just gonna enter right below there. And we are going to start with the Nav Toggle. So the Nav Toggle is essentially those 3 lines that make up the hamburger. So let's create a div. We are going to give this the class of Nav Toggle. Then within this div, we are making another div. And this div has the class Nav Toggle bar. And interestingly enough, we are going to use our CSS, make this div into 3 lines. And I will show you how to do that. Next, we want to create the drawer that pops out. So I'm going to call this a nav, and I'll give this a class of nav. And then inside our nav, we want an unordered list. And let's make our list items. So I have 4 items, and they are each links, so they all have an A tag, with an href, and we're just going to hashtag because we're not linking this up right now. So let's copy that 4 times, and let's put home, projects, about, and contact. Let's save that. Let's see what it looks like right now. I have live running, so it's on port 5500, and I can show you how I do that. I have this Go Live feature as an extension on Visual Studio Code. Then I click on it, starts it up, and there it goes. So we can see right now our nav items, they are in their unordered list and just right on the left. So we obviously need to do some styling. Let's start styling our side panel, side drawer, whatever you want to call it, and then we'll work on the interactivity of the hamburger itself. So let's go down here below the paragraph tag, P tag. Let's make a note, hamburger menu. Let's comment that. And specifically right here, we are working on the side panel. And to do this in Visual Studio Code, I'm just doing command and then this dash side, whatever you want to call it. Okay, cool. Let's now target the nav itself. And within here, we are going to give the text the color black. And now we'll do the background color. And I want the background color to be this kind of light blue color. So I'm going to do 9BAA-B1. Sweet. And I want the cursor to be pointer so that they all look clickable. I think this would just happen because they're A tags, but we'll just cover our bases. And then I want the font size to be 32 pixels. Height, I want it to be the whole viewport height, the whole view height. So I'm doing 100 VH. Scroll down a bit. I want it to go right, negative 480 pixels so that it's off the screen. And then I'm going to give it padding all around of 32 pixels. And I want it to have a fixed position. Top should be 0. And width of 320 pixels. And also, if we look back at what's happening at the final, as you can see, it's covering everything on the page. So you can no longer see the numbers on the bottom right. So to do that, we're going to give it a z-index. And the z-index is possible because we're giving it a position fixed. This also works with position absolute or sticky. It will not work with block. So just for your reference, we're giving it a z-index of 1. Okay, now we're also going to add a transition because we don't want it to abruptly just appear to the left. We want it to just be a smooth process. So we are going to give it transition right over half a second, 0.5 seconds, and we want it to ease in, or just ease in general. And now let's target our unordered list. So we're gonna do select nav, ul. I want all of the text to be transformed uppercase, and I want them to have an absolute position. I don't want them to have the bullets, so I'm going to give them a list style of none. Padding left of 50 pixels. And I found that displaying grid works really well because it helps center the items. Oop, not grid. Cool. And then the UL we also want to transform. And we want to transform it. We want to translate Y of 50%. And that is to move it down the page a bit. Now we're going to target the nav list items. So we're going to select all of that. I'm just going to target the class itself. And we're going to give this a margin, each list item, a margin bottom of 20 pixels and a font weight of 700. We are now ready to jump into our JavaScript file. So let's go to the index.js. I'm going to leave the HTML open so we can see what exactly is going on. I'm just going to close that. So what we are going to do is use DOM manipulation. And DOM stands for Document Object Model. I'm going to now create a function. I'm going to put it in parentheses because we are going to call it at the end. An anonymous function right at the end. Let's call it with parentheses. Cool. And if this is your first foray into JavaScript, I hope it can be a launching pad and you can continue learning. First, we are going to create a variable of hamburger. So I'm going to do const hamburger equals, and it's going to be an object because we're going to assign different keys. 2 keys are going to be the nav toggle and the nav themselves, and then we're also going to add a property of a function to it. First, let's create the nav toggle, and we are going to select, interestingly enough, the nav toggle. Select this class, we write document, and then query selector, and we're targeting, again, the nav toggle. So in quotes, dot nav toggle. Cool, and now we have that selected. Now we're also going to select the nav itself. So similar thing, document dot query selector, and this time just the nav. And not the class, just the nav itself. Now let's add our doToggle function. So please toggle this is a function, and it's going to take an event. Oh, okay, I forgot a comma. And this doToggle function, we want to prevent defaults from happening. If I can spell correctly. Cool. And then right below that, we want to now call our nav toggle and our nav to add the class expanded to them, to toggle that on and off. So because they're within this object, we can call them with this. And first nav toggle, we're going to add the class, so class list dot toggle, the class expanded. And then let's just copy this, paste it directly below, because we're just going to change nav toggle to nav. And that's all that's happening within our hamburger. We are not done yet, however, because we haven't created our click functions. Because remember, we want the hamburger to be clickable, and then the X to be clickable. So we're going to now call hamburger, and specifically we want to select within our hamburger the nav toggle, so we can use the dot notation to select nav toggle, and now we're going to add an event listener, which is a click event, and click events take a function, which again, it's going to take an event. And then we want to call this function. We want that function to happen on click. So we're going to do the same thing, hamburger, our dot notation, do toggle this, and specifically toggle the event. So now we can copy this whole event listener, because the only thing we're changing is we're changing nav toggle to nav. And that should do it. That's all the JavaScript we are writing for our hamburger menu. So let's jump back into the CSS. And now I believe if we add two things, we should see the start of our hamburger menu happening. So the first thing we're going to add is select the nav, and specifically on the class expanded, which we are toggling, we're going to add right of 0. Because if you can recall before, our right is negative 480 pixels. So on toggle, we want to bring it right into view, slide it in. The next thing we want to define, which we haven't even touched, is our nav toggle itself. So nav toggle, we want to have the cursor pointer. We want a height of 32 pixels, as well as the right should be 32 pixels. We want a fixed position. Start with position of fixed. And the top, 32 pixels as well. And the width of this is going to be 57.6 pixels. And the last thing is we want it to have a z-index. And if you can recall, our menu itself the panel has a z-index of 1, and we want this to sit on top of it. So let's give it a z-index of 2. Now let's check what's happening. Let's see if there's anything there. So as you can see, I can hover over. We don't have our lines yet. If I click here, it comes out. So we have the start. We know it's working, which is great. Let's actually create the bars, because right now, as you can see, nothing is there. So we go back into our code. In our CSS, let's select our nav toggle and our nav toggle bar. And then we're going to select, because we have 3 bars, we're going to select that, and then after and before. So let's get to it. Nav toggle dot nav. We haven't selected it yet. Toggle bar, and then I'm going to just copy this, put a comma, and then we're going to select it after, comma, before. And we're going to give this a position, each of these a position of absolute. Top should be 50%. And then this is important. We want, not transform, the transition so that, again, it eases. So we want transition all 0.5 seconds, and we want it to ease. And then let's also transform. And we want this transform to be a translate y of negative 50%. Let's give it we want to give each of these bars a background color of black. And we're going to also make sure they don't have empty content, so just an empty string. Height of each bar is going to be 6.4 pixels and a width of 100%. And now we need to assign their heights. So where are they on the page? Because as you can see, they're all stacking here. First, we're going to select the nav toggle bar. So I'm going to put that there. Just going to get this all set up. We want to select it after. And we want to select it before. So right here, we're going to assign this a margin top of 0. I'm also going to copy that because we want to assign them all margin tops. So that's going to be the middle one. Then this one is going to be the top one. Or technically the bottom one because it's moving further down the page. That's 12.8. And then the bottom one, or the top one, getting it all confused, of negative 12.8. And we need to actually make them pixels. So let's see what this looks like now. Ooh, cool. That was actually kind of interactive. So as you can see, we now have our hamburger menu. We just need to add the X, so the transition to the rotation and turning white. So let's get back to our code. So we want to select the nav toggle, specifically when it is expanded. And then we want to also select within the nav toggle expanded, the nav toggle bar. And let's do this after. Remember, we don't want the middle one. We want the top and the bottom to turn into our X. So we want to select after, and also let's copy this, comma, copy this, and then paste it in. And this time it's going to be before. So we select the top and the bottom. We want their background color to now be white, 6 Fs, and we want the margin top to be 0. Now we're going to select specifically this, the top one, after, because we want it to rotate. So we want it to transform, rotate 45 degrees. Then let's copy this, paste, and we want before to be negative 45 degrees, and that's going to form our X. And then we want the middle one to just disappear, right? The middle one isn't a part of our X, we just need 2 of the bars to make the X. So now we're gonna do nav toggle expanded, nav toggle bar, background of transparent. Let's check this out. That looks awesome. Okay, cool. I'm really excited. I think this turned out just the way I wanted it to. I like the formation. The only thing that isn't happening is our A tags, right? We have a line through. So what's going on there? Okay, so basically we did not, and maybe you noticed this, we need to wrap these within the A tag. Glad I noticed that. All right, let's save that. Let's check this out again. Okay, now it is functioning correctly. Awesome. This is going to conclude part 2. In part 3, we are going to do our bottom navigation with the hover effect, also using JavaScript. And again, I'm going to put all of the code within this repository. I'll put the link in the description and also in a comment. Thanks for staying to the end. Have a great day. Bye.